This is part 28 of my series of videos showing romance novels that I've bought. And here's some that I've bought just recently. And we're just going to look at all of them here. And I'll show the covers of them. Now the first one we're going to look at here is an arabesque book, back when it was published by Pinnacle Books. And you always see either the Pinnacle, later when it was purchased by BET, it'll say BET, and then there's the arabesque symbol. These came out in the late 90s and early 2000s. This particular one, Nefertiti Austin's novel Abandon, was published in, I think, 96. And this is an interesting book here that I look forward to reading. Though Abandon is fiction, my sentiment that there is not enough written about women in the Black Panther Party is sincere. And so it starts out with a part 1. Are you part of the problem or part of the solution? So it looks what interesting book. It takes place in 1969 there. Nefertiti Austin. So it's interesting backdrop for this romance novel. Now, arabesque focused on African American writers. Some were historical, but most of them were contemporary romances. And then later it was became the Kamani romance line, I believe, from Harlequin. And now some other books that we have here. These are Candlelight Romance Ecstasies. These are reprint. Most of these, all but one of them, are reprints of the earlier volumes. So they still maintain the original volume number on it. These came out like originally 1981 and 82, these early books. But these particular ones are reprints from 1987. So I think there might be some there, 1986 in here. The best of Candlelight is what this Candlelight Ecstasy Classic Romance, to distinguish it from the regular series that has a very similar cover design. And so this is book number 5. Now I tend to prefer obviously the older series. That's the one I collect, which I've talked about in my videos before, which ran from 1967 to, I believe, in 1982. And then this series started in 1981, I believe, and then ran to 87. But these were kind of interesting. Jane Castle, this is early work by Jane Ann Krentz. You know, again, this is in the reprint form. The original cover looked different. Here's another Jane Castle one, Right of Possession. See on the back there. Now, Rachel Ryan was a pen name for Sandra Brown. So she started off writing category romances, and I think this was actually her 3rd book. And now this is an interesting one. Kathy Clark, A Hint of Splendor. Book number 419. This is, you know, an original copy. These were published by Dell, by the way. Here's the info. This book came out in April 86, I believe. Let's see. April 1986. That's right there. Now, it's about, it says, it was the chance of a lifetime. Alyssa Stewart was one of the first private citizens chosen by NASA for space travel. The Challenger explosion happened in January 86, so it would have happened, this book, although it says April 86, would have came out in about March. So obviously it was too late to stop the book, and you see the NASA logo there and the shuttle taking off in the background. So an interesting coincidence that there was a book on the subject shortly after that happened. And the author has since released, I believe, an ebook version of it, but under a different title. I think it was called Starry Nights or something like that. Kathy Clark was the author's name. Now I have a whole bunch of Anne Mather books here, who's a British writer I've mentioned before. She wrote a lot of Harlequin Presents. In fact, she was one of the launch authors for that series in 1973. And these are two Ann Mather Harlequin Presents books. Now, these were actually originally published in England. See how it says original hardcover edition published by Mills and Boon in 1969 in the UK. The Harlequin Presents edition was published April 74. That was book number 41. But this is actually the 6th printing, so it was a popular book. May 77 is when this particular edition came out. And you can usually tell the old, well, they're kind of faded now a little, but the red page edges on the older Harlequin books. There's another one. This is book number 57, Legacy of the Past, also by Ann Mather. And let's see when this one came out. Well, it originally came out in England, and it says original hardcover edition published in 1966 by Robert Hale Limited under the title Beloved Stranger. The Harlequin Presents edition was published in 74, and then the second printing, which is this, is from 1977. Now, Ann Mather's first book, Carolyn, was published in 1965. So this is 66. So this is probably one of her earliest books. I haven't checked to see, if it's the second, third, or fourth, but it's definitely, I would think, within the top 5. So an early Ann Mather. And we have 2 more Ann Mather books here, both also Harlequin Presents, The Shrouded Web and A Haunting Compulsion. And this one, The Shrouded Web. Original hardcover edition published in 73. Harlequin Presents originally published, the U.S., Canada edition was September 76. And then went through 2 more printings. So this is the 3rd printing, the 3rd Harlequin Presents printing from March 1980. And this one here. So this one's a little closer in time, 1981, both in England and the U.S. And this is an interesting one. It's a trade paperback size, so it's a little bit bigger than the regular mass market paperback. This is published by Worldwide. I love that cover. It's very dramatic. Wild Concerto is the name of the book. It was published by Worldwide, which was an imprint of Harlequin. See, some of these information, sometimes you can see it's clearly wrong. Since her first novel was published in 1970, well, we know that's not the case because we just looked at one from 66. But it was Carolyn from 1965 was the first book that she published. So sometimes those dates get a little screwed up because of the, I think it might have been her first Harlequin book was published in 70, maybe, but it wasn't her first. There's an ad for Charlotte Lamb's A Violation, which was about rape, which is a subject that's not, often addressed in romance novels, but at least not as something that is a focus of the book, like that one is. Here we have 2 Harlequin Romance, the regular Harlequin Romance line. That had started in 1949. This one is from 1990. It says there on the side. This one, book 3275, is from 1993. Nice cover designs. And here's 2 of Harlequin Temptation, which was started in the 1980s as a sort of more sensual line than the other Harlequin lines at the time, probably in an attempt to compete with Candlelight Ecstasy, I would think. So these are from the mid-80s. And here's an odd one. Harlequin Intrigue. This one has a little bent corner, unfortunately. The Pirate Ghost by Laura Pender. This is from 1996. And for centuries, Gabriel Dyer lived beneath the sea until one night he rescued a drowning woman. Suddenly Gabriel could touch the world again. So it has a supernatural aspect to it. This one is Silhouette Intimate Moments with Nora Roberts, Night Shadow. This mysterious figure. In a city ruled by fear, a solitary figure shrouded in black walked the night, determined to awaken a terrified metropolis from the nightmare of crime. There was nothing, not bullets, and certainly not legal technicalities, that could deter the man they called Nemesis from his mission. So this more of like a Batman type character. This is from 1991. He walked the night, alone, restless, ready. Clad in black, masked, he was a shadow among shadows, a whisper among the murmurs and mumbles of the dark. So, when he was needed, he moved like thunder, all sound and fury. They called him Nemesis, and he was everywhere. He walked the night. So an interesting premise there. And here we have an early Silhouette special edition, number 30. It says up there in the corner. Now this was when Silhouette was still published by Pocket Books, or Simon & Schuster rather. Pocket Books being an imprint of, well, this is distributed by Pocket Books, but yeah, Simon & Schuster. So before Harlequin purchased Silhouette, this was from June 1982. Bride in Barbados. Now, Gene Stevens, it doesn't say there, but Gene Stevens is a pen name, if I remember right, for Gene Hager, who has also done mysteries. And recently, I think, if I'm remembering all this correctly, I think someone recently started doing a Gene Hager Wikipedia entry, just like earlier this year. That was nice to see. Now, this is Western Lovers. This is a Silhouette book from the 1990s, I think 95, but it's actually a reprint of a 1987, I believe a Silhouette special edition, actually. The Fairy Tale Carol, but it has a different cover, the original does. This has interesting promotion on the back. Become a privileged woman. You'll be entitled to all these free benefits. Sort of a big hotel discounts. Pages and privileges. Sensuous petite, blah, blah, blah. And this also comes with a little bookmark, too. So you can tear that off, and there's a list of the Silhouette line. All right. Now, this is an interesting one. This is a little thin book, which I think was probably a promotional type thing sent to subscribers. There's a little thing to keep your books in. Bookmate. But what it is a collection of romantic nostalgia. Short love stories by Charlotte Edwards, who I'd not heard of before. But she was an early, sort of pre-Harlequin writer. So these short stories on here range from 1945 to 1956. Then it originally appeared in magazines. This particular book came out in, let's see here, 1985. So interesting, little rarity, because you're not going to see those stories elsewhere, otherwise. Kristin Michaels. This was a series of books by this author, published by Signet. And you can see more Signet romances there by Kristin Michaels and Lynna Cooper and other writers. Lynna Cooper being Gardner Fox, as I talked about in one of my previous videos. And now we have 3 books here by Roberta Lee, who wrote a lot of Harlequin books, Harlequin romances, also wrote under the pen name Rachel Lindsay, a British writer who's well known for being responsible for the early 1950s TV puppet, animated puppet science fiction serial Space Patrol. Different than the U.S. Space Patrol, but a British television series. And these were published by Fawcett, it looks like all of them were, in the late 70s or early 80s. Interesting books there. And here's 2 books that were part of a contemporary romance category line published by Avon in the 1980s called Finding Mr. Right. And this is by Carla Neggers and Elaine Rako Chase, who have appeared in other books, other publishers' lines. Now we get into some of the historicals. This is published by Dell. Lucy Phillips Stewart, Destiny's Bride. It looks very interesting. They had these green pages back then. Now Lucy Phillips Stewart wrote some historicals for the Candlelight Regency line, the earlier version of that line that I had mentioned, the 1967 to 1982 version. And also writing for that line back then was Laura London, who was a husband and wife team, Tom and Sharon Curtis. Let's see, this says it's originally for 1978 because this book was a Candlelight Regency, part of that Candlelight series. But this particular printing is from 1985, as is this one as well. So they have new covers for them. And speaking of lines, this is The Tender Torment by Warner Books. Now this isn't part of the Warner Books Regency romance line that they had at the time, but it has the same cover by Walter Popp. He drew a lot of these covers here. This, like I said, this came out in 1980, so it was around the same time as that. There was a line that said it was a numbered category line called Your Warner Regency Romance. Here's a book called Ecstasies Captive by Nellie McFarther, published by Belmont Tower. You can tell by that BT, which means it's an older book. Slave Auction. She was led to the auction block in a daze. Published by Tower in 1979. This is a beautiful cover, Blazing Vixen. I can't remember if I showed this one or not before. This is from Ace Books, well known for their science fiction series. Blazing Vixen by Elizabeth Zachary. A Popham Press book, which I guess is an imprint of theirs, which I have not heard of before. And we have two books by Valerie Vale, Sea Flame and Oriana. Beautiful covers. Wow. The Devil's Daughters. These were published by Dell. And there's another one. Daughter of the Savage Highlands. And this is from 1981. Valerie Vale being a pen name for Janice Young Brooks and Jean Brooks Janowick. And in a previous video I'd done about my Avon Romance collection, the Avon Romance historical line. And these were two more books in that series called Ribbon Romances, or Banner Romances. And so those are two others from the 1980s. This is a beautiful cover, also published by Dell Books, as you can see there. This almost looks like it must be a newer version of it because the cover is so nice. I mean, it looks so good. I mean, the shape of the book is so sharp. But, I don't know. It was published in April 1989. There's no indication that this is a reprint that I can see. But, interesting. Helen Mitmere. Frisco Lady by Geraldine Saunders, who, if I remember right, was the creator of the book that became the basis of the TV series The Love Boat. A reader survey on the back, lots of questions. Wow. Do you ever write letters to the author or publisher? Look at this. Look at all these questions. This is amazing. Now, this is published by Pinnacle Books. There's some discoloration here. This is from 1979. A Joanna Lindsay book, Tender Rebel. I think this is Avon. I think this is from 1988. Everyone Loves a Lindsay. Let's see here. Yeah, 1988. June 1988. her 16th novel. There's some ads for Shirley Busby. There is no one quite like Joanna Lindsay when it comes to historical romances. In the previous video, I had shown book number 2 of the Indian Moon trilogy. Well, this is book number 1 that I just happened to get by Judith E. French, who also wrote a lot of the ribbon romances. And I'm just going to wrap this up here because I'm running out of time. I have a Philippa Carr book, who is also Victoria Holt. And this was originally a tapestry novel, Fletcher's Woman, Linda Lell Miller. Might be one of her first books, maybe even her very first, I don't know. I don't have the tapestry version of it, but I do have this reprint. Originally from 1983, this version looks like it's from 1990. And finally, just some more here. Iris Johansen, Elizabeth Lowell.